The pain started as a dull, heavy ache just beneath my ribs, right around the time Sarah's mother demanded another glass of wine. I shifted in my dining chair, gripping the edge of the mahogany table, hoping the sensation would pass. I was sitting at the far end of the room in my son David's house, though I rarely felt like a guest of honor. Tonight was a celebration for his wife's parents, who were visiting from out of state. The table was covered in expensive catering, crystal glasses, and loud, overlapping conversations. I was merely the background scenery. For the past 3 years, my role in this family had slowly eroded into something purely functional. I was the reliable babysitter when their nanny canceled. I was the silent sponsor who occasionally covered their property tax when David complained about a bad quarter at work. I did these things because he was my son, and after my husband passed, I wanted to keep my family close. But sitting here tonight, watching Sarah actively ignore my presence while directing the hired server to fill her father's plate, the reality of my position felt sharper than usual. A second wave of pain hit, much harder this time. It radiated across my abdomen, stealing my breath. I pressed a hand to my stomach, my knuckles turning white. The room's chatter faded into a dull roar in my ears. I tried to drink some water, but my hand trembled so much the ice clinked violently against the glass. The server noticed and paused, giving me a concerned glance. But Sarah waved him away to attend to her sister. I looked down at my plate, waiting for the cramp to subside. It didn't. Instead, it twisted violently, like a hot knife sliding under my skin. A cold sweat broke out across my forehead. I needed to get up, but my legs felt entirely useless. I looked up, trying to catch David's eye across the long table. He was laughing at a joke his father-in-law had just made, completely oblivious to the fact that I was struggling to draw a single complete breath. The third spike of pain forced a sound out of me. It wasn't a whisper. I leaned heavily against the table, knocking over my water glass. The spill spread across the linen tablecloth, and the loud conversations finally ground to a halt. Sarah turned toward me, her expression instantly tightening with annoyance rather than concern. David looked at the spilled water, then at my face. I looked directly at him, my vision blurring slightly at the edges. At my son's family dinner. I cried. My stomach pain is getting worse. David sighed, running a hand through his hair. He glanced at his in-laws, clearly embarrassed by the disruption. He didn't stand up. He didn't walk around the table to check my temperature or ask what was wrong. He leaned back in his chair and crossed his arms. He snapped, "Call a taxi." "I'm busy with my wife's family party." The room went entirely still. Sarah's parents looked down at their plates. Sarah gave a small, approving nod, taking a sip of her wine. Nobody offered a phone. Nobody offered a ride. My son had just dismissed my physical agony as an inconvenience to his evening. I didn't argue. I didn't beg him to care. A strange, cold clarity washed over me, numbing the panic. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, and ordered a rideshare. I braced my hands on the table, pushing myself up. Every movement felt like tearing muscle, but I kept my back straight. I walked toward the front door without looking back at the dining room. As I pulled my coat from the rack, I heard David apologize to his guests for the interruption, followed by the clinking of silverware resuming. I stepped out into the crisp night air, pulling the front door shut behind me. That click felt incredibly final. The driver arrived 4 minutes later. He took one look at my pale face and sweat-dampened hairline and immediately jumped out to open the door for me. He asked if I needed an ambulance instead. I shook my head. gave him the name of the nearest hospital, and focused entirely on the rhythm of my own breathing. The emergency room triage nurse did not waste time. Within 20 minutes, I was lying on a hospital bed with an IV in my arm and a doctor pressing firmly against my abdomen. The diagnosis was a severely infected gallbladder, dangerously close to rupturing. They prepped me for emergency surgery immediately, while the nurses prepared the paperwork. I pulled out my phone. I didn't call David. Instead, I called my niece, Rachel. She lived 30 minutes away, but she answered on the second ring. When I told her where I was, she simply asked for the room number and hung up. She arrived just as they were wheeling me toward the operating doors. She squeezed my hand, her eyes full of worry, and promised she would be there when I woke up. I closed my eyes as the anesthesia began to pull me under. I thought about the dining room table. I thought about the expensive wine, the laughter, and the way my son had looked at me. There was no anger in my mind just yet, only a profound, quiet acceptance. The surgery would remove a toxic organ from my body, but lying there, waiting for the dark to take over, I realized it wasn't the only toxic thing I needed to cut out of my life. I woke up to the steady beep of a heart monitor and the soft hum of the hospital ventilation. Rachel was sitting in the chair beside my bed, reading a book. When she saw my eyes open, she smiled, poured me a small cup of water, and helped me take a sip. The surgeon came in shortly after, explaining that the procedure had gone perfectly, though the infection was worse than they initially thought. I would need to stay for 2 days of observation and intravenous antibiotics. Later that afternoon, when Rachel stepped out to get coffee, I reached for my phone on the bedside table. The screen lit up. I had 3 emails from my favorite clothing catalog and a weather alert. There were no missed calls. There were no text messages. 24 hours had passed since I walked out of David's house in visible agony. He had not checked to see if I made it home. He had not called to see if the pain had passed. Sarah had not sent a polite, obligatory text. The silence emanating from that small screen was the loudest answer I had ever received. For years, I had made excuses for him. I told myself he was stressed by his demanding job. I told myself Sarah was just particular about her household, and I needed to respect her boundaries. I had convinced myself that their financial reliance on me was just a modern reality for young families. But this silence stripped all those excuses away. I wasn't a respected elder in their family. I was a utility. And when a utility breaks down and becomes inconvenient, you simply ignore it until you need it again. I locked the screen and placed the phone face down. Rachel drove me home on Tuesday morning. She offered to stay, but I declined. I was sore and moving slowly, but I was entirely capable of managing my own quiet house. I made a cup of tea, sat at my kitchen island, and opened my laptop. I didn't turn on the television. I didn't rest. I logged directly into my banking portal. I opened the joint spreadsheet I used to track my monthly expenses. I started highlighting lines in bright red. The auto draft for David and Sarah's premium car insurance. The secondary credit card I had given Sarah for emergencies, that she routinely used for expensive groceries and salon visits. The monthly transfer I made into their joint account to help cover the property taxes on their large house. I looked at the total amount I was subsidizing every single month. It was a staggering number. I had justified it because I lived comfortably and wanted them to have an easier life. But they didn't respect the money. And they certainly didn't respect the woman providing it. I spent the next hour clicking through menus. I canceled the auto draft for the car insurance. I locked the secondary credit card and reported it as permanently closed. I deleted the recurring bank transfer for their property taxes. I didn't send an email explaining my actions. I didn't write a long, emotional letter about feeling unappreciated. I simply closed the financial valve. The money would stay in my account, securing my own future. If they wanted to live a luxury lifestyle, they could figure out how to fund it themselves. The next day, I tackled the physical boundaries. Over the past 3 years, David and Sarah had slowly turned my guest bedroom into their personal storage unit. There were boxes of outgrown children's clothes they wanted to sell eventually, bulky holiday decorations that didn't fit in their garage, and Sarah's old exercise equipment. I ordered a large roll of heavy-duty garbage bags and a stack of cardboard boxes. Moving slowly to protect my healing incisions, I began packing everything up. I didn't fold the clothes carefully. I didn't organize the decorations by season. I simply placed their belongings into the boxes, taped them shut, and stacked them neatly in the front hallway. Then, I opened my phone and called a local handyman. Within 2 hours, he arrived and changed the locks on my front, back, and garage doors. David had possessed a key to my house since he moved out for college. He used it frequently, often dropping off the grandkids without warning or coming by to grab tools from my garage when I wasn't home. When the handyman handed me the shiny new keys, the metal felt cool and heavy in my palm. It felt like ownership. For a long time, I had viewed my home as an extension of theirs, a place that was always open, always available, a safety net they never had to ask permission to use. Not anymore. I locked the deadbolt, placed the spare keys in my jewelry box, and made myself a quiet, peaceful dinner. Friday afternoon arrived with bright sunlight and a crisp breeze. I was sitting on my back patio reading a novel when the doorbell rang. I marked my page, stood up, and walked through the house. Looking through the peephole, I saw David. He was wearing his weekend golf attire, holding a plastic container. I opened the door. He tried to push past me into the hallway, but I kept my hand firmly on the doorframe, blocking his path. He stopped, looking confused. He held up the container. "Hey, Mom. Sarah made too much pasta salad for the barbecue tomorrow, so we brought you some. Also, we're going to need you to watch the kids on Sunday morning. We have a brunch thing." He smiled, completely relaxed, entirely oblivious. Days later, he arrived at my door, smiling. He hadn't noticed the canceled credit card yet. He hadn't noticed the insurance payment missing. He just saw his mother, standing exactly where he expected her to be, ready to take his orders. I looked at his face. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. My voice was completely level. I said, "You abandoned me when I needed you most." His smile faltered, replaced by a defensive frown. "Mom, come on. Are you still mad about the dinner? You were just having a stomachache, and it was a really important night for Sarah's dad. You know how she gets when things aren't perfect. It was a severely infected gallbladder," I replied calmly. "I had emergency surgery 2 hours after I left your house. I was in the hospital for 2 days. The color drained from his face. "What? Why didn't you call me?" "I was busy," I said. David stared at me, his mouth opening and closing as he tried to formulate an excuse. "Mom, I had no idea. You should have texted. You should have told me it was serious. I told you the pain was getting worse," I reminded him. "You told me to call a taxi. I did exactly what you asked. Now, I have some things for you." I stepped back, allowing the door to open fully, revealing the towering stack of taped boxes and heavy black bags in the hallway. David looked at the pile, his confusion deepening. "What is all this?" he asked. "This is everything you and Sarah have been storing in my house," I said. "I need the guest room back. You can load it into your car now." "Mom, I can't fit all this in the SUV right now. Why are you doing this? His voice rose, carrying a note of genuine panic. I reached to the small console table by the door and picked up a manila folder. I held it out to him. He took it hesitantly. Inside there, you'll find the final statements for the car insurance, the credit card, and the property tax transfers, I explained, keeping my tone as professional as a bank teller's. I've canceled my contributions to all of them. The accounts are entirely in your hands now. You'll need to update the billing information before the end of the month. David opened the folder, his eyes scanning the highlighted numbers. The reality of his own lifestyle expenses was finally staring back at him. Mom, you can't just cut us off without warning. Sarah relies on that card. The property taxes are due in 3 weeks. You're a successful man with a busy life, I said smoothly. I'm sure you and Sarah can manage your own household. David left with only 2 boxes, promising he would have to rent a truck for the rest. He looked physically smaller walking down my driveway. Less than an hour later, my phone rang. The screen displayed Sarah's name. I let it ring. It stopped, then immediately started ringing again. This time, I answered. Are you serious right now? Sarah's voice was sharp, vibrating with anger. David just got home and showed me this folder. You canceled the credit card I was at the grocery store and my card was declined. Do you know how humiliating that was? It's your grocery bill? Sarah, I replied. You should be paying for it with your own card. We had an arrangement, she snapped. We moved into this expensive neighborhood because we knew we had your help. You can't just throw a tantrum over one dinner and pull the rug out from under your grandchildren. My grandchildren are fine, I said. But my money is mine. I suggest you return the expensive wine and buy what you can afford. If you do this, Sarah threatened, her voice dropping to a cold hiss, you won't see the kids. We won't come over. You'll be entirely alone. I was entirely alone in your dining room, I said simply. And I was alone in the hospital. I prefer this kind of quiet. I hung up. I didn't block her number. I just silenced her notifications. I walked into the kitchen, threw the plastic container of leftover pasta salad into the garbage bin, and started preparing my own dinner. The house was silent, but it didn't feel lonely. It felt clean. 6 months passed. Autumn turned into a mild, bright winter. My physical recovery was complete, and my financial accounts had never looked healthier. Without the constant drain of David and Sarah's lifestyle, I realized I had enough surplus to finally do the things I had put off. Rachel and I booked a 3-week trip to Italy for the spring. I joined a local botanical society. My days belonged entirely to me. David and Sarah did not fare as well. Without my monthly injections of cash, they were forced to face the reality of their spending. Through Rachel, I heard they had to sell the luxury SUV and trade it for a sensible used sedan. Sarah had to cancel her country club membership. They were learning the hard way that a lifestyle built on someone else's foundation can collapse in a day. In December, David came to my house. He knocked, waiting patiently until I answered. He didn't have the confident, entitled smile anymore. He looked tired. Mom, he said quietly. I miss you. The kids miss you. I was wrong that night. I was incredibly selfish, and I'm sorry. I looked at my son. I still loved him, but I no longer needed to save him. I appreciate the apology, David, I said. You can bring the kids over for a few hours on Sunday, but Sarah is not welcome right now. And I will not be discussing finances. He nodded, accepting the terms without argument. He knew he had no leverage left. I watched him walk back to his modest car, feeling a deep sense of relief. I hadn't destroyed him. I had simply stopped protecting him from the real world. And in doing so, I had finally protected myself. I closed the door, locked it, and went back to planning my trip. Sometimes, the most painful moments give us the clearest vision. For years, many of us believe that being a good parent or a good person means always being available, always fixing the problem, and always paying the price both emotionally and financially. But respect cannot be bought. And love shouldn't require you to make yourself small or accept being treated like an afterthought. Setting hard boundaries isn't about anger, revenge, or punishing your family. It is simply about recognizing your own worth when others refuse to. We don't have to set ourselves on fire just to keep someone else warm. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do for yourself and for them is to quietly step back and let them carry their own weight. If this story resonated with you, or if you are currently on your own journey of setting healthy boundaries and reclaiming your peace, please consider hitting the subscribe button. Give this video a like to help the channel grow, and leave a comment below sharing your own experiences. Have you ever had to walk away to protect your peace? I read every single comment, and I would love to hear your story. Thank you for watching. And remember to always value yourself first.